meet you, and thank you so much for the blog post that you've written for Farringford Legal this month.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So the blog post that you've written for us is all about ESG. So I was hoping that you could give us a brief rundown on what is ESG and where your specialty comes in dealing with this.
So ESG stands for environmental, social and governance. And as a term, it first came into being with investors looking for a way to consider those risk factors that didn't really fit into other things. So it was used from the perspective of saying, how does the environment affect this company and its valuation? These days, it's used to cover lots of things. It's used as a noun, it's used as an adjective, and it really covers anything to do with environment, social impact and governance when it comes to a company and what they're doing in respect of those matters.
Okay, and is this something that you've been involved in for a long time?
It's been something that I've really had an interest in for a while. I used to work in fund management, and to an extent that's where the investment background, if you like, comes in. But I'm really passionate about the fact that I think particularly SMEs need to have some help in understanding what ESG is and how they can benefit from it. You can't really open a newspaper these days or look at a blog or look at anything on a website without seeing ESG. It's very, very commonplace now. But a lot of the focus is for larger companies. And my sense is that for SMEs, sometimes it's a little bit harder to understand how it can help them, what impact they can have, and most importantly, where to make a start. Sometimes there's too much information and it just gets a little bit hard to work out really where to take the first step.
I completely agree. It can definitely be a case of information overwhelm, especially when it comes to all of these acronyms that seem to be very easily bandied about in the media and the business press, but they're not necessarily easily decoded by people whose focus is on their business on the day-to-day. So you've written some or created some templates for Farringford Legal for us to help to distribute to our clients to help them with their ESG strategies and understanding ESG. So is that something that you could elaborate on briefly here?
Sure. Just to start, really, SMEs account for about half of the turnover in the UK private sector. They also account for a third of all UK carbon emissions. So if SMEs can address some of their environmental challenges, they could have a huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
From a societal perspective, there's about 16 million people who are employed by SMEs in the UK. So again, there's this massive opportunity for SMEs to play a huge part when it comes to addressing ESG matters. So SMEs are important, and I think that's one of the things that's really important to me, is to help SMEs make a difference. And Farringford are very committed in themselves to making a difference for their clients and helping their clients to action their ESG goals. So I've worked with Farringford to produce a series of documents that helps their clients with the G commitment, the governance piece. And that's really about making commitment to what you're doing, making it public, making sure that all your stakeholders, your clients, your employees, your investors, the public as a whole, understand what you're doing. So whether it's committing to something called an environmental business charter, and that's a document that helps you explain at high level what you think you'd like to aim for in terms of making a difference to the environment, particularly in respect of reducing carbon emissions. Another of the templates is an employee handbook. So how can you incorporate your ESG goals and your ESG strategy into your corporate handbook for your employees, talking about the way you commit to their well-being, perhaps, or the things that you're asking your employees to commit to in terms of reducing their own carbon footprints. Another document we've got is one that allows an SME to look to their suppliers. So this is one of the areas where SMEs as a whole get caught in a positive way, perhaps, is that their larger clients might be looking in their own supply chain to understand what their suppliers have as ESG credentials, sometimes because those larger companies are having to report on a public basis themselves. And ESG can play a part through the whole supply chain. So if an SME can talk to their supplier and perhaps add in some what we call green supplier terms to their contracts, then they can be asking their suppliers to make a commitment to reduce their own carbon footprint, and just making the change happen the whole way through the value chain.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, it sounds really like a way from a governance perspective to start future-proofing the business from the ground up. And hope, the goal of every SME is to not just survive, but to thrive and to grow. And so by having these sorts of strategies and philosophies and the approach to ESG in place from the very outset, will really set the scene for a strong and successful future for SMEs.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time and for the blog post. We will have the link in the post below, so that people can read more about ESG and sustainability for SMEs. And thank you again, Cathy from Tanamera, for your time.
You're welcome.